Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Business Talk Library, and today I have another special guest on, Mr. Robert Coffey. And the reason why I think this guest is special is because, it's not often that you get someone that has the experience of entrepreneurship, working in the corporate space, and working in the not-for-profit space. And I think that there are some similarities and some differences across the board. So I wanted to invite him on so we can talk about his journey through those three worlds. So welcome to the show, Robert.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Robert, tell us a little bit about, your experience in the entrepreneurship world.
Absolutely. So maybe about 7, 8 years ago, I was interested in photography, and I started real quick. I started trying to figure out how to take a better picture. So I, started investing in equipment. Reached out to some people I knew that was in the space, and started learning more. And then I started surrounding myself with people that I looked up to. And at first, just like in the creative business, sometimes you get people who are a little more clingy, holding on to their information, but then you also have people that will freely share and invite you with open arms to somebody who wants to learn. And so thankfully I had that, and had a little bit of both, honestly. But there were people out there that reached out, and they just took me in, and I started learning more and more and more. And so at the same time, I was going to have my own full-time job going on. And one point, I left my full-time job, and I ventured out on photography full-time. And it had its good days, just like a business cycle. It had its good times, and it had those times where you're like, man, this is real entrepreneurship, by the bootstraps, you just kicking it, hoping, reaching out and hoping this comes through, and, taking this for a little less than what you expect or what you would like to get. And just all of that. And at the same time, I was having a family grow. So, it was a challenge getting into it, but I enjoyed it, and I still have a business going on. I took a step back from it because some of my priorities kind of shifted, and also the quality of life that I wanted to live, it needed to match what where I saw myself and my family at in the future. So kind of shifted where I went with the photography, but still maintain that to this day.
Gotcha. Now tell us a little bit about the professional side of working for the for-profit businesses. What was that experience?
Yeah, so I work for a major company. They're a publicly traded company, before I'm with the organization I am now. And so that it was very fast moving. There was actually a couple companies I worked for. There was one called, it's a major fishing company that's based now in Columbia, South Carolina, and worked there for almost 6, 7 years. And I left there in the engineering department, but it was very fast paced. I mean, and once we got into a bigger space where we were, aiming for sales for $1 billion a year, and we're acquiring companies, mergers and acquisitions. It's moving very fast. But along with that, it comes um, a lot of challenges when you're dealing with staffing, and how do you bring two companies together that have some overlap their in their workforce. And so you learn how to adjust in that environment. It's very fast paced, and it can be very aggressive, very assertive, dealing with global leaders. And so it was a challenge. One of the things I don't miss was sometimes when they had to downsize for various reasons. I don't miss feeling like quarterly profits matter. That was something you just kind of had to understand what the nature of the beast was. And so I stayed there for a while, and I left. Then I went to work for another one, but this one was a little more assertive. They constantly innovated, just to stay on top of things. And I finally left there a couple years ago, thankfully, and I am where I am now. And so one of the things that I enjoyed was the fast pace, was the innovation. There's not a whole lot of layers you have to go through to make things happen. I felt in the companies I worked for. So you had a very aggressive engineering team, very aggressive product development team, and they were putting it out. So that I think that's one of the main differences where I work now versus working for a profit, especially a publicly traded company.
Gotcha. Now, how much of the entrepreneurship journey or the skills or the experiences developed there, how much do you think that helped you in the for-profit and even now in the not-for-profit?
Yeah, so the entrepreneurship part, that brings a level of persistence. It brings that skill set of tenacity, and you just have to get it done. It stiffens you up when you have to deal with people that are difficult to deal with, especially when you sat in on hard meetings and you're at the end of that table and you just got to take it. And so and you can't bend, because at the end of the day, you're trying to get a better product, you're trying to get a better process. And so you really have to be engaged, as well as, you know, I would say you have to have some, what we call EI, or emotional intelligence, where you just have to know how to handle yourself. And that builds you up. I mean, and so when you go into the nonprofit space, sometimes nonprofit, from what I've seen, I've worked with it from my photography career as well as now my professional career. They can move at a different pace than the for-profit industries. And so sometimes you have to bring some of that in there, but also understand you're in a different environment now, where things may move at a slower pace. And so I had to learn that, and I cut my chops in that for-profit publicly traded area, as well as in that entrepreneur, because especially entrepreneur, you got to get up and you got to get on it, and you have to follow up. And when the opportunity arrives, I had to learn, you can't just turn down opportunities. You have to figure out how can you craft it. You have to learn negotiating skills, not giving away things. What can you, if you have to give something, well, they have to give something up as well. Just kind of learning how to deal in these spaces, and also understand character, because a lot of times you have to deal with behaviors more so than anything. And those could be some of the biggest hurdles you have to deal with, is dealing with and managing people behaviors. And so working out on the entrepreneurship side, as well as the nonprofit and for-profit side, it's given me a lot of insight, and I think it helps round you out, just really round out how you present, how you deal with difficult situations, difficult people, and also how you help train. One of the things I did was also train, sometimes my staff would grow in the for-profit space about 50, 60 people. And I have to train them. I have to perform, performance management, the whole works, documentation, the hard stuff, the nasty stuff that may seem nasty, but sometimes the necessary stuff. So it helps. I think it helps well around you, but also give you a perspective that, you're not only working for yourself, but you're working for more family, and also for customers, whether they're internal or external.
Gotcha. Now, one of the things that I guess you say I have a little bit of concern about when it comes down to the perception that people have about non-for-profits, where a lot of times people downplay the level of skill, the level of work, and just what's involved to run a not-for-profit. Because even, when I talk to different entrepreneurs, they're like, oh, I want to have a social impact. Like, I'll be able to run my for-profit business and just, do this non-profit thing on a big scale, easily. And I'm like, I don't think that's how that works. So
yeah,
what is
there's yes. A lot of times you'll feel absolutely. One of the things I do, as I'm involved in my local church. Was one of the leaders there, a youth leader for years. And we also have this little area in the back that me and my wife manage. It's this fellowship hall. So it takes, a lot of times in nonprofits, it's only going to be a core group of people that's getting it done. That's just, that's just kind of the nature of it. but I think one of the things you got to remember, what is the mission of this place? What are we trying to achieve? Does it match up with my views? Who are we serving? And I think that's one of the things that nonprofits look to do a lot. They just look to serve. And so the mission may be there. Matter of fact, I was on recently a nonprofit, and I was on the board of directors, vice president, and wow, the mission was there, and it was a great thing. It fit me almost to a T. Doing all the works, building websites, and all of these kind of things. But the question is, do you have the labor? Do you have the management there to make sure this thing gets off? And a lot of times, because it's nonprofits, if it's not well managed, and you're not having the right people in the right place, you will get that perception, because people perceive it as like, they may not have the budget to get quality people. And so now we're dealing with this. And so I think nonprofits, first of all, they're there to serve. I think they're not, I feel that should be the mission, we're looking to serve people. That's why we're a nonprofit. And so, and from there, what do we get? We get, you hopefully get people that are skilled and people who have the heart to do the things that the nonprofit is set up for. But there is I think there is this perception that nonprofits, they don't require much, but it takes a lot. It takes a lot to run a nonprofit. Oh, it takes a lot. And so we, one of the things when we were recruiting for that nonprofit was, one of the things we looked for was the people who would be willing to work, and were skilled, and they had proven themselves in other areas while they're working along with us and with other agencies. What do they contribute? And so you just kind of look at that and look at their passion and what they're involved in, and you kind of bring them in, take them on your wings, kind of fill them out, but you do have to have those same level of expectations, because it's a business. It is a business, and those level of expectations, the ones that you bring from a for-profit business, it should be the same. And yeah, that's kind of one of those things that there is that perception there, and there are nonprofits that have some opportunities for growth and some challenges to deal with, but there are some that run so well, and they just have it all boils down to that management.
Gotcha. Now, one of the other things I think that becomes a very big deal within, whether it's I guess you say a independent entrepreneur, or you're you're working in a for-profit business or a not-for-profit, is when it comes down to like the culture and the culture of the team. How do you find, how have you found the difference between I guess you say, the culture between the three different environments?
Yeah. So, I would say I've been blessed to have worked with some really great managers. I've been blessed to work with some managers that are difficult to work with, quite frankly. It just helps round you out. But I think the culture, it can be a difference. But it really just, for me, it just boiled down to who's in charge and that person who sets the tone of that culture. It could be industry specific. A lot of times you may find yourself in a different industry that is a lot more aggressive with making sure sales are met and different things like that. So to bring successful people in, you may find those successful people are a lot of times more assertive. And that may rub people the wrong way. So sometimes it depends on the industry. Sometimes it depends on the manager, because while you can work in that type of industry, you could have a manager in there that is setting a tone, that cares about people, that is considerate, that's empathetic, but is also results driven. And so sometimes that may be taken a couple different ways. But I think one of the things you look at is, how do they treat the people? And you can have good people in different industries, in a for-profit and a nonprofit and an entrepreneur. It really just boils down to who do you have in place? What's the vision? You know, who's setting a standard at the top? Because a lot of times that person at the top is they pushing hard, or you know, they're a certain type of way. The people below them will follow that, and so I think that's one of those things where you really have to see who's in place to kind of really gauge how it is. I've worked in organizations that was very top heavy, that had a lot of chiefs, a lot of people at the top. But when it comes to implementing, it's almost like a hands-off approach. Like, yeah, we'll let you know what to do. But as far as how to do it, and some business organizations are set up like that, and some organizations for a good cause. But a lot of them, it's like, I just kind of want to take a hands-off approach.
Gotcha.
And a lot of times, people in certain industries, depending on what it is, they need to feel, your team needs to feel that you'll get down there with them and you can do the work, and they can look to you and they can rely on you. But if you're not setting that standard, if it's not coming from the top, a lot of times, even though you may have a great manager in place, that great manager, you may find them getting burnt out or leaving just because, you know, they have two different value sets, and it's just not lining up. So I think it really boils down to how it's set up at the top, and how that person treats their people, how they view the organization, and how they strategically move forward. Because a lot of times, and you've worked in this space as well, you know, strategy, not having a strategy can be huge to people who are very structured and like to see things move forward. You can be the nicest person, you know, you can have a great company, but if you don't have a strategy of how you progress, and especially when the people below you see, you know, but their opinions not valued, that can lead to another stressful environment. So having the right person in place and having those things in place, it really, you're talking about human management, human resource management, how to business management, just 101, just getting down to the brass tacks.
Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, one question that I like to ask every guest that comes on the show is, when you think about, you know, just your experience in the three different worlds, I mean, and the audience for this show is mostly entrepreneurs and professionals. What are two pieces of advice from, you know, your journey that you learned that you would share with, you know, the listeners and the viewers, to say, you know, these are two things that will help you, you know, be successful on your journey, whatever path it may be?
Yeah, I would say, if I had to use two words, I would say, number one, listen. The team listen, well, three words: listen, I would say trust, and I would say serve. Listen to the people who you've placed around you. Trust your hiring process. You may need to make adjustments to it, but the people you surrounded yourself with, you've likely made a good decision, but you have to trust them and trust that they have the best interest of the organization at heart. Now, will there be opportunity for performance? Just making sure things are measuring up? Absolutely. But you have to trust the people, that they're doing their job, they're active in their roles. You don't have to be a micromanager, but trust your hiring process and trust that you've made a good decision, and allow them to excel. The third thing, serve. We have to believe that we are here, and this may go to speak a little higher, and I think that will elevate the organization. But serve the ones who you're I would say either your constituents, or there's constituents, your customers, internal, external customers, your stakeholders. Serve them, and you do that by, you know, making sure things are done on time. You make sure that you're following up with phone calls, making sure you're going above and beyond perhaps what they've asked. And so, but if we get our mindset off of ourselves. And we take the mindset that, you know what, I'm here to serve someone else and to make their lives better, to give them a better product, to make sure that their staff is adequate. They have health care, that they have, different things like that, the things that matter. I've learned as a manager, when you take care of people, they'll take care of you and they'll take care of your business. They'll work for you. They'll show up when they won't show up for another manager. Say, you know what, Rob, I'll show up for you, because you asked me. But especially if you're the leader of that organization, that's what you want. You want people there that's going to help build your organization, but you have to put them first. And so that comes with service, you're listening, and trusting the people that you've placed around you, that you're going to build them up, and you're going to make sure that they have all the tools that they need. And you're going to also make sure that you trust them, that you believe that you made a good hiring decision, and that you're going to bring them around, and they're going to elevate the company. I think those would be the three things that I've learned, man, that just kind of stuck with me.
Awesome. Well, Robert, definitely thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for telling us a little bit about, like I said, your life in the three worlds, and just some of the things that you've learned from that. Really appreciate you being on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Talk Library. If you like what you heard and you want to hear more, be sure to click the subscribe button and follow us on all social media platforms as the Business Talk Library.